You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. So Andrew, let's first of all, to begin this discussion, let's talk about the Association of Statisticians and Historians. The association was set up in 1973. And in 2023, this year, the association is celebrating its 50th anniversary. 20 years after the association was formed and set up, the word historians was added on to the title, to the association's name. And the purpose of the association is to promote and encourage research into the statistical and historical aspects of cricket throughout the world at all levels, and to publish the findings. The association has around about 850 members worldwide. Members are statisticians, they're historians, and people who are passionate about the game's history and statistics. So Andrew, tell us more about the association and the work the association does, and how is the association preserving the history and the statistical side of the game of cricket?
Well, I think you very neatly summed it up there. The Association of Cricket Statisticians and Historians are, as it were, the internationally renowned guardians of all things relating to the statistical side of the game. And many of our members are very eminent historians as well. If I just add a little bit more about those early meetings back in 1973, but if I also just go back before that, because there had been various organizations, the Cricket Society in particular, in the late 1940s had set up statistical groups, and various other individuals, and various pamphlets had been produced. A very eminent historian called Roland Bowen then produced a series of journals in the 1960s, which really were the forerunners of the ACS journal today. Roland Bowen's Cricket Quarterly had a very wide circulation amongst people who were fascinated by statistics, and the early historians as well. And as a result, there was a feeling amongst many people. Robert Brooke, one of the key founder members as well. And a meeting was convened, and Robert flew the flag for statisticians in many ways. You're right in saying that the H was added. I started my own involvement with the association, my own involvement with Glamorgan County Cricket Club. I was very much an S initially, so a statistician. And I can remember growing up in Cardiff in the late 1960s, early 1970s. I was absolutely fascinated by the statistical side of the game. I suppose some people could have regarded me as a walking wisdom or something like that, but it was those numerical facts that really did appeal to me. But as my own career has developed, my own professional career has developed as a historical geographer, and then as an author, I've moved very much in now. I'm more aligned to the H's, the historians, and obviously have published widely on the history of the game here in Wales and also other parts of the UK. So many of the members of the association would fall into the category of S or maybe H, but I'm S and H, and many leading figures in the association today fulfill both roles. We are keen, as I say, that all matters to do with statistics are properly dealt with, and we have many members of the association who work for either the Wisden, the Cricketing Bible, who work for Cricket Archive, which would be regarded as a treasure trove online cricket statistics and scorecards and information. We also have as our president David Kendix, a very well-known statistician, and someone who is the official, he wears a hat as the ICC statistician. So all matters relating to statistics, to various other issues about status of games, things like that, that is where currently the ACS plays a role, with David representing us at ICC level and being the person as well who the ECB contact. I'm also the chair of the Association of Scorers in Professional Cricket, and so that's my S element. But the England and Wales Cricket Board turn to people like David and myself, and the committees, the ASP, the Association of Scorers in Professional Cricket, have a committee of well-known scorers and also well-known statisticians. So I sort of have a foot in both camps and help to make sure that we are not only preserving the history of this great game, but also what we're doing is making sure that everything that happens both now and in the future is all done properly in terms of the heritage and the long history of the game. For just one example, another eminent member of the association, Philip Bailey, when it came to drawing up early lists for match classifications, and that, I must say, was part of the association's early work, and the early members were very keen to have lists and classifications. When was the first great match? When was the first class game? But then with the involvement of limited over matches, certainly in the UK from 1963 onwards. So it was Philip Bailey who actually coined the phrase List A. Of course, that's now used widely by statisticians throughout the world. But what Philip did was he drew up a listing of matches, List A, which he felt were the inverted commas proper ones, then List B were the ones which may not have been, and List C, etc. So it's been the classification, the drawing up of lists, and trying to assemble an agreed and a uniform set of parameters by which matches can be treated by statisticians. Obviously, that's very important. For example, when we're trying to work out how many hundreds, let's say, did a certain player score in their career. So over the years, eminent statisticians like Irving Rosenwater, before that, if we go back into the late 19th and early 20th century, when books were brought out listing all sorts of matches, there were, in the case of W.G. Grace, some games where his performances were regarded as being first class, but no one else's were. So all of these little irregularities, etc., have been smoothed out. And we now, the ACS, working in conjunction with Wisden, as I say, with ICC and other governing boards, we now have a recognized set of parameters by which the games can be recorded. So that in particular is one of the key roles of the association. But we also publish many, many books. And I'm delighted to say I'm the editor of both a statistical book, the second 11 annual, I'm the assistant editor, I should say, for that, and overseer on behalf of the committee. But I'm the editor of a series called Cricket Witness, which is an historical series looking at many aspects of the history of this great game. We, the association, have also published many books, little biographies. One of the excellent series is called Lives in Cricket. We've also had a series called Famous Cricketers, which lists the statistical achievements as well as the biographical achievements of a whole host of famous players. We have a worldwide remit, and we have a worldwide membership. In fact, only a couple of years ago, I was helping to put together a book on cricket in Malaysia, and I'm glad to say the association will hopefully fairly soon be publishing a book on the history of cricket in Mexico. So we are not just a group of Anglophobes just focused on cricket in the UK. We have a worldwide remit, and as I say, we are preserving and celebrating the history of this great game.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, isn't it? You do it because you're passionate about the history and wanting to educate and teach that to other people. Isn't that right, Andrew?
Absolutely. And people can become members of the association in a very simple way. All they have to do is type into Google Association of Cricket Statisticians and Historians. If you actually type in the letters ACS, you go to the American Chemical Society. Well, I'm sure that's a very worthwhile and august association. But if you want your cricket fix, Association of Cricket Historians and Statisticians, Google that, or Association of Cricket Statisticians and Historians. Either way you do it, you will come to the ACS website, and we will welcome you with open arms. Members receive a quarterly journal. There are various other booklets members can purchase. Obviously, the books are available for purchase by non-members as well. We are having in October a 50th anniversary, a Golden Jubilee lunch as well, where a very eminent cricket statistician will be addressing hopefully a large gathering, and we'll have a suitable lunch in Leicester, at which I'm hoping that there'll be around 7 of our founder members still with us, and who will be able to raise a glass to the association.
Absolutely. Celebrate 50 years, the half century. Raise the bat, as they say in cricket.
Well, I think I'll be raising my scoring pen. Yes.
Absolutely. That's wonderful to hear. And let's talk about your journey in cricket. Let's talk about how you got into cricket, your journey and discovering this great game. So tell us what sparked your interest in cricket statistics and history. You touched on a little bit about that there. So what was the interest towards the stats and the history of the game? What made you want to gravitate towards that?
Well, I think an interest in cricket is a life sentence, but I was very lucky, as I mentioned earlier, in the late 1960s, to go to a very good primary school here in Cardiff, the capital of Wales. And the school I went to, there was an element of teaching in the Welsh language as well as in the English language. And it has to be said that the school I was at also then was a feeder for the girls in the class to go to one of the private schools, fee-paying schools in Cardiff. At the time, there wasn't a fee-paying school for boys, so we were a little bit miffed that all of our very nice young ladies in our class would end up going to the girls' school. But anyway, one of the bonuses for me being at the school in North Cardiff, the primary school, was that in my class was a chap called Neil, whose father just happened to be the wicketkeeper for Glamorgan County Cricket Club. The gentleman concerned was David Evans. And at the primary school I was in Cardiff, through Neil's influence and David's influence, various members of the Glamorgan team came to the school to do coaching and outreach work. And I'd been quite fascinated just growing up and playing cricket in the 1960s as a schoolboy. Don't forget, that was in 1968. That was when Glamorgan beat the Australians at Swansea. 1968, of course, was also the year when Malcolm Nash was hit for 6 sixes by Gary Sobers, also at Swansea. And in 1969, Glamorgan were the county champions for the second time in their history, having been county champions before in 1948. So I became quite immersed in the game. Most of my friends at the school, we also played cricket. We got, as I said, we had some basic coaching. And what happened was that then the secondary school I went to, as I said, Neil was there, the son of David Evans. And again, the school that I was at had very strong links with Glamorgan cricket. I had some absolutely mad keen teachers. My geography and my English teachers both were decent players themselves, club cricketers, although my English master would have been good enough to have played county cricket had he not opted to move into the world of education. So it came quite natural then, having been coached by as I say, being coached by county professionals, to then go along and to watch Glamorgan. So I went to the Sophia Gardens ground in Cardiff. I went to the St Helens ground in Swansea and various others with my school friends. And again, knowing the players, it was absolutely fantastic. Now, my own playing wasn't brilliant, although I could hold a bat, and I was a bit of a wicket keeper, a shocking leg spin bowler, it must be said. But I was often not, I was in the 12, but I didn't make the final 11. And of course, that lovely phrase, 12th man and scorer. Now, what had actually happened was that in my primary school, one of the teachers, a man called Mr. Reed, who'd also been quite a high-level football referee as well as a mad keen cricket person, Mr. Reed, one afternoon during the 1968 Ashes series, actually, one rainy summer's day, he actually taught us how to score. He wanted, of course, to follow the progress in the Ashes series between England and Australia. So he either turned, I can't remember whether it was the radio or television, but he turned it on, and we couldn't go outside to play. So what he said is, okay, I'll show you what scoring is. So he gave us all bits of graph paper. We all had pencils. And I was fascinated, this amazing code that you put down dots and you put down various symbols for what happened. And it was great to sit there scoring in real time. Of course, he was delighted because he was able to follow the England team's progress. So I got this fascination, as I say, with scoring. I was pretty sharp when it came to numbers. So going along, following Glamorgan, a couple of opportunities came during the mid-1970s and the late 1970s then to actually score at matches. There would have been a public address announcer who would have needed someone alongside to tell them how many fours or sixes the batter hit. And I actually started scoring second team games for Glamorgan. I made my first 11 debut in the summer of 1978. Now, by that time, I'd just started. In the summer of 1978, I'd left school, having got A levels in geography, geology, and English. And I was about to start my first degree at Exeter University. So it was great to actually, in the summer holidays, to work for Glamorgan, to be paid for scoring. Absolutely fantastic. And it nurtured my love of cricket statistics. I have to admit that my grant in my early months at Exeter University, my grant actually went on purchasing cricket books. There were some excellent antiquarian bookshops, both in Exeter and back home in Cardiff. And so I started to build up a library of Wisdons and various other books, and I just got immersed in the great game. Then in 1981, I was very lucky to be approached by BBC Radio Wales. BBC had just opened up a sports department at Broadcasting House in Cardiff, and they were looking to start ball-by-ball commentary of Glamorgan matches especially on a Sunday afternoon when the Sunday League games were taking place. There had been excellent television coverage beforehand in the 1960s and in the 1970s, but ball-by-ball commentary on the radio was something new. So I ended up working for 25 years as the scorer statistician on BBC Radio Wales, chipping in now and again with microphone in hand to proudly say how many balls Matthew Maynard or Hugh Morris had faced, and how many 4s or 6s, all the sort of things. I guess at the time that Bill Frindle and other people associated with Test Match Special would have done. In 1982, I also commenced on a PhD in historical geography at Cardiff University, although I have to say that whilst I was studying the newspapers and other records, primarily to look at the way the suburban development was taking place, when I was looking at the newspapers, I would start obviously in the back page in the summer, and I would actually read and transcribe some of the cricket scores before moving on to the areas of greater academic interest. I was lucky enough in the summer of 1982 and 1983 to also act as Glamorgan's first 11 scorer. The gentleman who'd previously occupied that role was an octogenarian, and by, as I say, by those years, he was just finding life on the county circuit to be a little bit too much. I was offered in 1984 the opportunity to be a full-time cricket scorer, but there was no winter work. And I therefore decided to continue with my PhD studies and also then to work at weekends and other times with the BBC as their scorer statistician. By this time, I'd also become Glamorgan's official statistician. I'd taken over from a gentleman called Wayne Thomas and another gentleman called Michael Morgan, who'd actually had assembled a lot of Glamorgan's first-class records and was starting to do a lot of their limited over and list A stats. So together with Wayne, I was able to build up and add to Glamorgan's statistical records. So during the 1980s, during the 1990s, and then into the early noughties, I was combining a role as a schoolmaster with working on the radio. I taught in various schools, independent schools in Devon and latterly then in Somerset. And in 2004, sadly, the Glamorgan first 11 scorer, Gordon Lewis, passed away. And this was in March, literally 2 weeks before the start of the first game of the 2004 season. By that time, things had also changed at the Sophia Gardens ground. There were new buildings going up. There were plans to redevelop the ground. I'd been involved as a consultant looking at various aspects regarding the setting up a learning centre. Glamorgan did have a schools visits programme. But what I was asked to do was, okay, how could we celebrate the rich heritage of cricket in Wales at our new stadium? How could we be a centre of excellence, not just for Glamorgan cricket, but a centre of excellence for Welsh cricket, something about which I'd written several books back in the late 1980s and again in the 1990s. So little did I realise that whilst I was sat in these meetings helping Glamorgan staff and committee to plan for these new facilities, little did I think that in 2004, the chief executive of Glamorgan County Cricket Club would then come to me and say, look, Andrew, these developments, hopefully we're going to get the green light. Do you want to come on board and you can be first team scorer as well? So my life changed. My road to Damascus, as it were, was actually an Iceland Air flight, because when we landed after an A-level geography and geology field trip to the country of Iceland, not the supermarket, I hasten to add, but after landing at Heathrow, I received on my mobile phone a text message to get in touch with the Glamorgan chief executive. And as I say, it didn't take me too long after consulting with my wife to move back full-time to Cardiff. I did do a little bit of part-time teaching at the sixth form college here for a while, but we raised sufficient funds to set up the CC4 Museum of Welsh Cricket, which has subsequently become the first fully accredited cricket museum in the UK. So we have an archive and a vast collection of, well, certainly well over 10,000 photographs, as well as over 100 artifacts relating to the history, the rich history and heritage of the game in Wales. It also serves as a learning centre, and I mentioned earlier, growing up in Cardiff, having had Glamorgan players come to the school, now I'm I now lead up the education team at Glamorgan County Cricket Club, and we have certainly pre-COVID in 2019, we had 22,000 young people that year come to the ground to learn about the history of the game, to play softball cricket, to get the cricket fix and to watch games as well on, I'm glad to say, on free tickets, and to do everything that I did in my early years in short trousers back in the 1960s. And now here I am with long trousers, helping to share my passion and my love for the great game.
That was quite fascinating listening to your journey there, Andrew, and you must be extremely lucky to have this opportunity to be a part of a sport that you admired so much from your formative years until now.
Yeah, people often ask me, when my wife and I go to social meetings or you meet people for the first time, and what do you do for your, what is your job? Well, I think I can say that I'm unique in the sense that I'm the only full-time professional cricket scorer and historian in Wales. And as far as the scoring is concerned on the county circuit, I'm one of the few people to actually have a full-time contract with the county. Most of the scorers will be employed during just the summer months, or even on a match-by-match basis. But I've got a full, I'm salaried, I'm based at the Sophia Gardens ground full-time, and on match days I fulfill other roles as first 11 scorer, as stadium announcer, and helping with the match management. And that, of course, includes the international matches. And one of my proudest moments as a scorer, or as even a cricket person, was being at Cardiff in 2009, the opening match of the 2009 Ashes series. It was the first time that an Ashes match had been played not in England or Australia, but in Wales. And to be part of that, those 5 days, Monty Panesar and Jimmy Anderson blocking out the last 50-odd balls to save the game. And as I say, with my role as stadium announcer at Sophia Gardens, to also pick up the microphone at various stages during the Ashes test in 2009, and to welcome people. I do speak a little bit of Welsh, so to welcome people and to say a few things as well, together with the ECB's match announcer. During that game in 2009, that was probably one of my proudest moments. I have to say, though, that in terms of results, in 2015, the opening test of the Ashes series again held in Cardiff. On this particular occasion, though, on the fourth evening, Joe Root took a brilliant catch on the boundary's edge as Australia were dismissed. And to actually be part of an England winning Ashes test setup was absolutely fantastic. And I know Glamorgan were playing the next day in Chelmsford, and I travelled then from South Wales to the London area, and I was absolutely buzzing because I knew that I would have been the first Glamorgan scorer to actually score and take part in a winning Ashes match. And they They can't take that away from you. Just going back to the 2009 Ashes test in Cardiff, it was, as I said, the first test match in Wales, and Cardiff, the Sophia Gardens ground, became the world's 100th test match venue. And so to be part of that, to see the ground change, to play a role in the way the ground has been transformed from a park into a fantastic international cricket stadium, that has made all the long hours of blood, sweat, tears and toil in record offices, trying to find out information about the long history and heritage of cricket in Wales, which goes back to the 1770s, I hasten to add, to be part of, as I say, the team in 2000, the scoring team in 2009, and again in 2015. That's made everything so worthwhile.
Absolutely. Did you have any cricketing idols growing up? Some people that you admired watching the game?
I would say Geoffrey Boycott, John Edrich as well, was those two, Boycott and Edrich. Just watching initially on television, just watching, as I said, the 1960 black and white footage from 1968. I've got vague memories of watching the game in 66 and 67, but of course in 1966 it was the Football World Cup, and I've got much stronger memories in 1968, especially the final game at the Oval, when I was glued to the television at home. But my parents were having some new carpets, and they said, "Look, Andrew, there's not going to be any play at the Oval. Look, it's huge thunderstorm. It's a washout. Let's go into town and let's decide on these new carpets." So anyway, we jumped on the bus, went into town, and I was thinking, well, you never know what might happen. And we went to the large department store in the centre of Cardiff, and the televisions were there, and there was a group of people clustered around because, of course, as we now know, loads of people had mopped up at the Oval and play was about to restart. So my parents were quite happy to leave me there standing with this throng of people, watching Derek Underwood work his way through the Australian lineup like a hot knife through butter, whilst my parents were deciding on the particular colour of carpet, etc. We came home on the bus. My parents were happy having purchased the carpet, and I was happy having watched Derek Underwood bowl at Australia. So those are some of my collective early memories. I suppose really when I then started watching Glamorgan, I would have to say that Alan Jones, the left-handed opening batter, absolutely fantastic. His brother Ivion Jones is the wicketkeeper, and just getting to know them, getting to know the Glamorgan players, and just being accepted as part of the Glamorgan cricket family. And over the years, getting to know people I've mentioned earlier, like Hugh Morris, Matthew Maynard, Steve Watkin, Robert Croft. The list is, I could rattle them off and bore the pants off you. But cricket is a team game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it is a game with individual batters and bowlers. But I would have to say that actually watching and then knowing the likes of Alan Jones, Don Shepherd, Ivan Jones, what great cricketers, but also most importantly, what wonderful men and what wonderful people as well. In more recent times, Peter Walker, who of course was a fine broadcaster as well as an administrator with the Cricket Board of Wales. Very sadly, Peter died at the start of COVID back in 2020, but it was rubbing shoulders with people like him, rubbing shoulders with other great names in Glamorgan cricket, and getting to know people in English cricket. It's been a real privilege and an honour.
Absolutely. Last question, just before we move on to our next discussion point. What advice would you give to someone who wants to become a statistician or a historian? within cricket, or for any amateur statistician or historians, someone like myself who's just doing it for a hobby and for pleasure? What tips would you give and advice?
Well, I would say don't get put off. Use the internet. Use the wonderful treasure trove of information which is there. Back in my early years with the working for Glamorgan, my early years working with the ACS as well, we were relying on scores that were published in newspapers, scores which have been picked up in books, going through score books as well. Nowadays, of course, all that information is digitized, and you can sit in your homes and you can surf and you can get so much information. The biggest advice I would say is if people find things which are wrong, if people find errors, if there's new information. Only recently, I acquired some brand new information about some early Glamorgan players of the 1920s. It's a lifelong journey, and even though, as I say, I've published widely, I don't say that everything is definitive. You keep finding things out, you keep adding, and the advice I would say to someone who's starting off as a statistician, as a historian, is enjoy it. Let people know. Contact your local cricket authority, whether that's a state in Australia, whether that's a district or a province in another country. In the UK, if you're attached to a county, whether it's a minor county or a first-class county, use the internet, tweet, let people know about some of the records and statistics. Join the ACS, of course, and share and enjoy. That's the mantra that's been behind the ACS since the founding meeting at Edgbaston in 1973. Share knowledge and enjoy the journey, and it's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great advice there, Andrew. For our next... Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed our historical series episode, looking back at the history of cricket with Andrew Hignell, Secretary of the Association of Cricket Statisticians and Historians. If you are interested in becoming a member of the Association of Cricket Statisticians and Historians, head over to their website, which is in the description of this episode.